Welcome back to another English listening practice video. Today's story will help you learn new vocabulary and improve your comprehension naturally. Listen carefully and prepare to change your mindset. The morning sun always touched the top of the old stone clock tower before it reached the rest of the valley. For as long as anyone could remember, the people of Oak Haven looked at that clock to know when to wake, when to eat, and when to sleep. But for Leo, the clock felt less like a guide and more like a cage. Leo was 24 years old and worked in his family's traditional bakery. He did the exact same job as his father had and his grandfather before him. Every morning at exactly 4 a.m., the heavy brass bell of the clock tower would ring. Leo would wake up to mix flour, water, and yeast for the day's bread. It was a good life, a safe life, but to Leo, it felt empty. It felt like a story that had already been written by someone else. He wanted to experience the world beyond his small, quiet valley. But he felt completely trapped by his family traditions and local expectations. One rainy afternoon, an old traveler entered the quiet bakery. His coat was wet and his boots were covered in thick mud from the long roads. His eyes held the bright spark of someone who had seen great mountains and wide oceans. He didn't look like the local townsfolk who lived in the valley. The traveler bought a small loaf of bread and sat peacefully by the window. He pulled out a leather notebook and began to draw beautiful sketches. Leo was highly curious and brought him a warm cup of hot tea. The old man thanked him and looked up with a kind smile. "You look like a man who is thinking about far-off places," the old man said. Leo smiled faintly, looking down carefully at his flour-covered hands. "I think about them, yes, but my path is already decided," Leo replied. "I'm a baker because it is what my family does for a living." The old man stopped drawing and looked deeply into Leo's eyes. He reached into his deep coat pocket and pulled out a blank, polished piece of wood. He placed it gently on the table right next to a small carving knife. "Do you see this simple piece of wood?" the old man asked calmly. "Right now, it is completely blank and looks like nothing at all," the traveler said. "But inside it, there could be a bird, a ship, or a beautiful flower. The wood does not choose what it eventually becomes in this world." He pushed the blank piece of wood across the table toward Leo. "Your life is not a fixed book that you simply read," the old man said softly. "It is a piece of raw wood and you are the master artist. Do not wait for the future to happen to you. You must carve it yourself." That night, after the bakery closed, Leo sat quietly by the warm fireplace. The old man's powerful words echoed continuously in his mind. He looked closely at his hands and realized they were strong and capable. For years, he believed that his future was a fixed road he had to walk. But now, a powerful new idea was taking deep root in his mind. The future is not something we simply find along our journey. The future is something we must actively create with our own choices. He picked up the piece of wood and knew his life had to change. The hardest part of changing your life is leaving behind what is comfortable. The next morning, Leo woke up way before the tower bell rang. He stood alone in the quiet bakery looking at the familiar ovens and tables. He loved his family deeply, but he did not want to stay there out of fear. Leo had a secret passion that he kept hidden from the world. For years, he had been absolutely fascinated by architecture and modern design. In the evenings, while others rested, he drew sketches of beautiful buildings and bridges. He had never shown them to anyone because he thought it was an impossible dream. At breakfast, Leo looked at his father with a serious expression. "Father, have you ever wished you did something else with your life?" Leo asked. His father looked surprised, then smiled warmly at his young son. "When I was young, Leo, I wanted to be a professional musician," he confessed. "But the bakery was safe, and it provided a good living for us," his father said. Sometimes we choose safety over our dreams because safety is very easy. Contentment is a good thing, but it is not the same as true passion. That honest conversation changed absolutely everything for Leo. He realized that his father wasn't trapping him in the local bakery. Leo was trapping himself by not speaking his true thoughts aloud. That evening, he packed a small bag with his clothes and drawing supplies. He also packed the blank piece of wood and the small carving knife. He decided to move to the bustling city of Grandon, hundreds of miles away. Grandon was a place of endless opportunity, growth, and modern design. It was time for him to take his very first steps toward growth. When Leo announced his big decision to the town, many people shook their heads. "The city is dangerous and you don't know anyone there," they warned him. "Why throw away a guaranteed job for an uncertain and risky dream?" It is a common truth that the world will often tell you to stay the same. People fear change, and seeing someone else pursue a dream makes them uncomfortable. But Leo remained firm and did not let their doubts stop his plans. He understood that criticism is often just the fear of others disguised as advice. The long journey to Grandon took 3 full days by horse coach. As the familiar mountains of his childhood disappeared, Leo felt intense anxiety. He was leaving his comfort zone completely behind for the first time. He had no job waiting for him and very little money in his pocket. But he had a clear vision, and he had the willingness to work hard. Grandon was much larger and louder than anything Leo had ever imagined. Massive buildings stretched high into the sky, constructed of iron and glass. People walked incredibly quickly, focused entirely on their own business. For the first few weeks, harsh reality hit Leo very hard. He lived in a tiny, cold room at the top of an old apartment building. He spent his days walking from one architectural firm to another. He showed his creative drawings to every manager he could find. But the responses he received were always exactly the same. "Your drawings are beautiful, but you have no formal training," they said. "We only hire people with expensive degrees from the city academy. Go back to what you know, young man, and stop wasting your time." Rejection is an incredibly heavy weight for anyone to carry. After weeks of hearing the word no, Leo sat on a park bench feeling defeated. His money was running out and his shoes were wearing thin. He looked at his notebook, suddenly feeling foolish for leaving his home. Maybe the townsfolk were right, and he was just a simple baker. He reached into his pocket and felt the smooth piece of wood. He brought it out and realized it was still completely blank. It had not changed because he had not yet begun to carve it. He realized that failure is not the opposite of true success. Failure is simply a necessary part of the journey to success. Every rejection he received was a valuable lesson on how to improve. He looked closely at his designs and saw what was missing. They were highly creative, but they lacked precise technical measurements. He didn't need to give up. He simply needed to learn the craft. Instead of asking for a job, Leo completely changed his daily strategy. He went to the Grand City Library every single day without fail. He studied books on engineering, mathematics, and complex building materials. To pay for his small room and food, he found a night job. He worked at a local city bakery from midnight until 6 a.m. He mixed heavy dough just as he had done back in his hometown. Then, instead of sleeping, he would study at the library until noon. It was an exhausting routine that tested his discipline to the limit. There were days when his eyes burned from intense tiredness. His hands shook from drinking too much tea to stay awake. But Leo did not complain because he felt a deep sense of purpose. One afternoon at the library, Leo noticed an old professor struggling with books. The man was trying to carry a large stack of heavy reference materials. Leo quickly stood up and politely helped the man carry them to his desk. The professor noticed Leo's drawing notebook open on the wooden table. It contained a detailed drawing of a modern iron river bridge. The design used a unique arch to support incredible amounts of weight. The professor adjusted his glasses and looked closely at the page. "Did you draw this impressive structure yourself?" the old man asked. "Yes, sir, I did," Leo replied politely to the gentleman. "The mathematics in this section are slightly incorrect," the professor noted. But the concept is brilliant and solves a major weight distribution problem. Where exactly did you study architectural engineering, young man? I didn't study anywhere, sir, Leo said honestly and humbly. I am learning everything from the books here in this library. I work at a bakery at night to pay for my room. The professor looked at Leo for a long, silent moment. He saw the dark circles of exhaustion under Leo's focused eyes. But he also saw an intense fire of determination and dedication. Talent is common, the professor said with a smile. But the discipline to study alone after working all night is rare. Come to my office at the university tomorrow morning, the professor said. My name's Dr. Harris, and let us see what you can really do. That meeting was the exact opportunity that Leo had been praying for. Dr. Harris gave him a chance to prove his worth to the academy. He allowed Leo to attend his advanced engineering lectures completely for free. Leo sat at the back of the classroom listening to every single word. He took pages of detailed notes and studied them every night at the bakery. Soon, the wealthy students began to notice the quiet young man. He always had flour on his sleeves but knew all the answers. Months turned into a full year of constant, intense effort. Leo's life was a cycle of baking, studying, drawing, and sleeping. He had absolutely no time for parties, relaxation, or entertainment. But he was truly happy because he could see his immense progress. His drawings were now real, professional, and mathematically perfect designs. One day, Dr. Harris entered the classroom with a very serious expression. The city government had just announced a grand public competition. The old wooden bridge in the city center was failing rapidly. They needed a brilliant design for a brand new iron bridge. The competition was open to anyone, and the winner would get a contract. The classroom erupted into excited whispers among the competitive students. Leo felt his heart beat faster as he listened to the details. He walked across that exact failing bridge every single night. He had watched how the river water moved around its weak supports. He had already been designing a replacement in his mind for months. For the next 3 weeks, Leo lived on almost no sleep at all. He poured all his knowledge, passion, and life experiences into his design. He wanted to build a bridge that was both strong and incredibly beautiful. He wanted it to inspire the citizens who walked across it daily. The night before the deadline, Leo was putting final details on his blueprint. The candle on his desk was burning low, and his vision was blurring. He suddenly doubted himself and feared competing against massive engineering firms. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the old piece of wood. Over the past year, he had carved the wood whenever he felt stressed. Now, it was no longer a blank and formless block of wood. It had become a beautifully detailed sculpture of a soaring eagle. Its wings were spread wide, looking completely ready to fly. Leo looked at the wooden eagle and realized something important. He had already changed completely as a human being. He was no longer the passive young baker from the quiet valley. He had successfully carved himself into a powerful creator. With renewed energy, he quickly finished his detailed blueprint. He signed his name at the bottom and delivered it to City Hall. 2 weeks later, a grand ceremony was held in the main room. The area was filled with wealthy investors, famous architects, and journalists. Leo stood humbly at the back of the crowded room in old clothes. The mayor of Grandon took the stage to announce the grand winner. We received over 50 designs for the new river bridge, the mayor said. Most were standard, traditional, and incredibly expensive to build. But one specific design stood out from all the rest, the mayor continued. It was highly efficient, revolutionary, and possessed a unique beauty. The winning design belongs to a talented newcomer to our city. Please welcome the creator of the future, Mr. Leo Vance. The entire room burst into loud, thunderous applause. Leo stood completely frozen for a moment, unable to believe his ears. He looked at Dr. Harris, who was smiling proudly from the front row. Leo walked down the aisle, his heart pounding with pure joy. The next 2 years of Leo's life were a whirlwind of activity. He was now the head inspector of the massive bridge construction site. He wore a hard hat and walked proudly among the iron beams. He treated every construction worker with deep respect and kindness. He remembered what it was like to work hard with your hands for a living. The workers loved his attitude and worked extra hard for him. Finally, the grand day arrived when the bridge was completely finished. It was a masterpiece of modern iron and strong stone. The city held a massive opening festival with music and crowds. As Leo walked across his bridge, he noticed an old man on a bench. It was the exact same traveler who had visited his bakery years ago. Leo walked over happily and sat down next to his old friend. "It is a beautiful bridge," the old man said with a warm smile. "Much better than a loaf of bread, wouldn't you say, Leo?" Leo laughed, feeling a tear of pure joy in his eye. "Thank you for giving me the courage to start," Leo said softly. The old man shook his head and looked at the iron structure. "I gave you nothing but a simple piece of wood, Leo," he replied. "You had the courage inside your own heart all along. You just needed to realize that the knife was always in your hand." Leo reached into his pocket and handed him the carved eagle. The old man admired the fine detail of the wings and smiled gently. "Keep it, Leo, to remind yourself of your inner power," the old man said. "Whenever you face a wall in life, you can build a bridge. Every time you learn a new English word, you are growing. Every time you practice speaking, despite your fear, you improve. Your current situation is just a blank piece of raw wood. The knife is in your hand, so go out and make your future."